Hello, welcome to Wits End. My name is Mike Walsh and I'm here to spoil your day. The topic this week is freedom, a word that is never far from the lips of demagogues and scoundrels. It is a noun with enormous impact. It is something everyone wants, especially enslaved millions living under repressive governments. Freedom can be a cry for war, revolution, chaos, and even peace. It is a word that has inspired poets and politicians, prophets and priests. It is also a word that has aroused great hatred and social revulsion. Rivers of blood have been spilled in the name of freedom. Men and women have been willing to die for it, on the battlefield and on the scaffold. It is a word everyone knows, but hardly anyone understands. Freedom falls roughly into 5 main categories: national freedom, group freedom, intellectual freedom, economic freedom, and personal freedom. To the majority of us, personal freedom is the most important. Why should we obey anyone else? Why are we not allowed to do as we choose? And if we disobey, will we be punished? By whom and to what degree? In the name of what? For the sake of what? We in the West believe we are the freest people on earth, and we are compared with North Korea and Putin's Russia. But just how free are we? There are plenty of things we aren't allowed to do. If we break the law, we lose our freedom. If we slack at work, we lose our jobs. If we drink and drive, we lose our license. If we commit murder, we lose our life. So our personal freedom is limited, and rightly so. If everyone was allowed to do as they please, world would be king, anarchy would rule. Civilization as we know it would collapse, along with our freedoms and civil liberties. Total freedom is impossible. It is limited by governments, by law, by economic circumstances, by social pressure, and by cultural taboos. We must work whether we like it or not. We must fit in with our peers, even if the fit doesn't feel comfortable or right. We must be careful how we speak. Say the wrong thing, and the sinister forces of political correctness will gather against you. If you're a teacher, you won't be allowed to teach. If you're a politician, you won't get re-elected. If you're a TV personality, you'll disappear from the screen. If you're a journalist, no publisher will print what you write. If you are an ordinary working person with no power or influence, you hardly have any freedom at all. Violate a cultural taboo, and you're free to eat out of a garbage can and make your home in a storm drain. It may be iniquitous, but some people have a lot more freedom than others. Democracy is never fair, and freedom favors those with wealth and status. The problem of personal freedom is one of degree. Freedom for the ordinary Joe worried about his job, struggling to pay the rent, is a bright, shimmering mirage, always out of reach. Only those with an independent income are free from slavery. One way an individual can gain influence is by joining a group. In today's world, very few individuals can have much influence unless they are a member of some organization. With the rise of sophisticated minority groups, like people of color, feminists, homosexuals, and the transgender community, all clamoring for one freedom or another, all playing the oppressed minority card, democratic governments seem to be at a loss at how to deal with them. Politicians with the word freedom continually in their mouth can hardly criticize black people for demanding justice, to be free from persecution. Nor can they denounce women for demanding equality, or homosexuals for protesting against discrimination, or transgender men claiming to be females. Even when these groups go too far, even when they demand the impossible, even when their activities reduce the freedom of others, the politicians contrive to look the other way, too afraid to speak out. And they are not alone in their pusillanimous pandering. Broadcasters, celebrity, business leaders, anybody with a lot to lose shut their traps and gaze off into the distance. No one has the guts to ask one simple question. Should tolerance be granted to those groups that demonstrate intolerance, which systematically sets out to destroy the lives of those who disagree with them? Like Pontius Pilate, they wash their hands and refuse to answer. All minority groups, all oppressed people, believe they are fighting for freedom. This provides an ideal to aspire to, adds a moral dimension to the longing for justice rooted in every persecuted individual. Victory, however, brings an abrupt volte-face. Freedom won, the new privileges must be defended. In order to defend them, the freedom fighters take up the very weapons used against them, and ironically, become the new enemies of freedom. Many Latin American countries lean towards this model. So do victorious minorities. Under our oppressive government, intellectual freedom is the first to go. In the 19th century, under a mildly repressive regime, Russia produced Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. These two men were engaged in subversive activities at one time or another. Dostoevsky was sent to Siberia, but was later reprieved when he wrote a ode dedicated to the Empress. Tolstoy was too big a name to touch. Under benign repression, Russia was supreme in literature. Under Stalin, things were very different. Writers who criticized the regime were ruthlessly liquidated or sent to the gulags. Under Stalin, Russian literature dwindled down to nothing of worth. Apart from the production of great works, freedom encourages self-respect and helps people to stand upright and do what their consciences dictate. In the 21st century, such freedom is an endangered species. We in the West believe we have freedom of thought. We are kidding ourselves. The news and entertainment media are owned by oligarchs who feed us pablum and propaganda. They decide what we should think, the opinions we should hold. Democracy demands conformity. The social media is a new kind of beast, a hungry beast, fond of demonizing dissenters. Literature and free speech are under attack once again. A man writing fiction in the voice of a woman or someone of a different race is condemned and shamed for such a violation of identity. Imagination is taboo. Say something mildly unflattering to anyone of an oppressed minority and you're slapped in jail, accused of a hate crime. Your life is ruined. There seems to be an innate impulse towards conformity in the human character, a herd instinct. No one wants to be out of step or at odds with their fellows. To get along, you go along. Those who don't go along are punished in all sorts of ways. Social ostracizing, unemployment, and shame, to name but three. These days, one must be economical when it comes to free speech. Surveillance cameras are everywhere. So are video cameras. We are followed, tracked, photographed, and watched 24/7. You can't take a shit without somebody measuring the size of the turd. This may be good for law enforcement, but it does little for personal privacy. None of this sounds much like freedom to me. Freedom can also be a burden, too heavy to bear. It can be frightening, a threat, something to escape from. How many of us would like the load of decision and responsibility taken off our backs, to have a strong leader to carry it for us, someone we can follow and believe in, someone who will clear up the mess and the confusion, give us answers and tell us what to do. America looks to their president, Britain to the prime minister, Muslims to their ayatollah, Jews to the rabbi. In the Hungry 30, in the depths of the Great Depression, Germany looked to a man wearing a small mustache. It is a mistake to suppose that Hitler came to power through cunning and deception. He was democratically elected to power because the majority wanted a savior. They were sick of freedom. Freedom took away their jobs. Freedom made their money worthless. Freedom gave them nothing but hopelessness and empty bellies. Hitler promised to fix all this on the condition that the German people give up this silly, abstract idea of liberty. Freedom died in Germany with hardly a whimper. Freedom is a very fragile thing. It depends on a great many factors: tolerance, economic stability, and the critical judgment of just how much freedom to allow, where to draw the line between too much and too little. Too much and you have a tyranny of the majority. Too little and you have a troublesome underclass of malcontents and misfits, stirring up social unrest. When things are going seriously wrong, mistakes must never be admitted. The media continue to pump out the pablum and the propaganda. Happy, positive message fill the airways. Or if necessary, fear is used to remind us of how happy we are to be living in a democratic society. The external threat of terrorism or war is employed to restore conformity and take away some of our freedoms and protections. Surveillance is justified. Suspension of habeas corpus is passed with little opposition. Extraordinary rendition, in other words kidnapping, becomes okay. So does illegal imprisonment and torture. Governments, even democratic governments, are always suspicious of freedom. The ordinary citizen shouldn't be troubled with weighty matters beyond their understanding. Pablum propaganda is what they need. Pablum and propaganda are what they need, and plenty of it. We the people are seldom told the complete truth. We the people are more often lied to, palmed off with platitudes and catchy slogans that mean absolutely nothing. Knowledge is freedom. Without it, freedom is blind. Without it, freedom is a blind cripple stumbling around in an empty room. We in the West take our limited freedoms too much for granted. Freedom is always under threat and has many enemies: ignorance, intolerance, propaganda, apathy, fear of the other, terrorism, zealously elected officials with their hands on the levers of power. Freedom is an illusion, manufactured in Hollywood and on our TV screens. We aren't free. We are controlled, manipulated, and hoodwinked, told what to think and how to behave, what's acceptable and what's not. We are free to move around, to change jobs, to get married to the person we love, and divorce the person we hate. We have freedoms other societies don't. We have freedoms other societies don't enjoy. But for some of us, they are gradually being whittled down, one by one, until the light of freedom is eventually extinguished. So how much freedom is enough? How much is too much? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that is for you to decide. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and click on the link to my website in the description below. Until the next time, stay frosty, stay skeptical, and never vote for a man wearing a small mustache.